It was a mess this year from beginning to end. There were simply too many off-field issues to deal with. In addition to the poor play on the field, I think that bothered Fred Wilpon an awful lot. There's no question. I think that that obviously played into things. The way this team finished, which was not strong, and we had a quitting controversy earlier in the season. It certainly looked like at times this team, if they didn't quit, they didn't care toward the end. I think that also played into it, and that was one thing that I think, Mike, way back, I think when we were in Florida, I mentioned to you at the time, Chris, I think you were on vacation, that I thought it was important to evaluate this team at the end and see how they played and see how they finished for the people who were here. And obviously, I guess Fred took that into consideration here from what he said today. It as I said, did not stun me. It surprised me a little bit that it came this quickly and this swiftly. But I think if you're going to do it, I think it is the best time to do it, and you try to move forward from here.
Eddie, a couple of things that just don't jive here. The first one is Wilpon. Wilpon saw this team fall apart. He saw the quitting incident. He saw all these different incidents. Up until 4 or 5 days ago, he was steadfast in bringing both of them back. Mm-hmm. He knew the team had played terribly. He knew that it was an embarrassment. He knew all this stuff. Why was he steadfast in that he was bringing them both back if he knew the whole time he was? I mean, you telling me something in the last 3 days changed his mind? Because a week ago he was still saying he was bringing them both back.
He said no today. I do know this, that at least one player, I believe that there were others as well, spoke to the management here about the situation and about next year. And I do know that, and it happened recently. It happened over the weekend, over the last 4 or 5 days. I think that obviously had an effect on
Just saying a player went up and told them he had to get rid of Valentine.
Well, basically, yes, there were players that spoke with management and were concerned about next year if Bobby came back. There were players on this team who know and who feel and sense that this team is going to have a similar look next year because of contract situations, and they just didn't believe that it would be any better next year than it had been this year, and they were concerned about that.
I hope that ball player hit 370 with 46 home runs, because there is not any way at all any Met player has any right to go to management to complain about the manager when they all stunk. And they were all heavy, and they didn't hustle, and they all, and that goes from Piazza right on down. I mean, Al Leiter, anybody you want to name, I don't see how. Look yourself in the mirror. Don't be blaming the manager on the fact that you are making $10 million a year, had awful years. I find that incredibly gutless.
Well,
let's have these players have the guts to tell us who those players are.
Chris,
so they can go ask them face to face while they did it. Let me hear that.
I think that, I think it was more a talk or conversation about dynamics and relationships and the way the way things were handled this year. I think that's it probably had more to do with that than decisions, actual decisions on the field,
so,
and
Eddie,
who bat who in the lineup.
So you think somebody actually changed Wilpon's mind in the last 4 or 5 days?
I'm guessing, Mike, because he said no here today. I mean, he was asked that question, and I think you heard the answer that, it was a compilation, I think he said, over the course of time here, over the last, 6 to 8 weeks of the season.
Now, that part's very peculiar. Now, let's get to this other very peculiar part. Mm-hmm. He doesn't ask his general manager whether he should fire the manager. He just fires the manager himself. Mm-hmm. But then he tells the general manager, go hire a new manager. Even though he only has 1 year on a deal, go hire a prominent manager. Well, wait a second. How does this work? You have a lame duck general manager who wasn't consulted on firing the last manager, now gets to hire the new manager?
Well, I think everything in this organization goes through Fred Wilpon. I mean, any personnel decision, any contract decision, this decision obviously will as well. It's going to go across Fred Wilpon's desk. It's not like he has said to Steve Phillips, go find a manager, get him in the fold, and then we'll talk about it later. I mean, everything is going through Fred's hands, over Fred's desk. So in that situation, he's going to have the final say, regardless of what Steve is going to say. But
so Fred's hiring the manager, not the general manager.
Well,
Fred's hiring the manager.
He's going to have the final say on
right.
it. I mean, I think they're in what they're going to do is, I guess, they said they were going to sit down now at this point in time, and they probably will have some meetings here, and I'm sure Fred is going to be in on that meeting. Steve will be there. I would imagine Jeff Wilpon is going to be there too, and they're going to talk about candidates. There'll be other guys, Jim Duquette, some of the assistant general managers. They'll talk about guys, and they'll come to some sort of focus on what's how they're going to pursue or in what order they're going to pursue guys, and then go from there.
And if they hire a prominent manager, let's say they go out and hire a prominent manager, okay, a guy who's won, a guy who's going to command a big salary over 3 or 4 years, a Luke Piniella or whoever it may be. I don't want to start throwing names yet. But the bottom line is, Eddie, that guy is going to have enormous more power in the organization than a general manager who probably thinks he should have got blown out this year and he's got 1 year left on his contract.
It's a strange situation that Steve he's on a lame duck. We've seen this before with this with the manager and the general manager. We've seen it before here with the Mets, so it's not new, but it's a strange situation. There's no question about that, because if you're going to hire a manager, you're obviously not going to hire for 1 year. So you're right. I mean, it is a peculiar situation. Steve has dealt with it before, and he seems to be okay with it, but it's one thing I did want to ask and didn't get a chance to ask you because they cut off the press conference, which is unfortunate, is how much, one of the things Bobby always wanted was more say in personnel decisions, and
right.
I wonder, with a new guy coming in now, if he does want more of a say in personnel decisions and who is going to be on the field and who they might go out and get, whether that's going to be okay with Steve, a general manager who's on the final year of his contract.
Was this question asked? If it was, I didn't hear it. Did anyone ask Fred directly why Bobby got fired and Steve stayed?
That
was the answer to that.
Basically, he said that he said he felt that the organization could go forward with Steve. He said that the mix wasn't right with Bobby. That it was his feeling that they would probably face more of the same next year if Bobby was back as the manager. And he felt that Steve was Steve and his staff, as he said, were the right people to guide this team forward.
Eddie, listen, I don't have a. You can convince me that Valentine had to go. I wouldn't have done it, but you can convince me. I don't care what players think on a lousy team making all this money that they want the manager gone. That goes one ear and out the other when I hear players talk. But you want to convince me that Valentine 2 years in a row underachieved with a high, payroll? I mean, you want to make a change there? I mean, I'm going to have a tough time arguing for the fact that he should stay. I'll be the first to admit that. And I know he's difficult with the media, so he's not going to get a break with the media. The media doesn't like him, so I understand that too, and that's a factor. But somebody have to convince me.
There are guys that like him a lot, though, Chris. You know that as well. There are guys that like him a lot.
A couple. But you find me somebody out there that says that Steve Phillips gets a chance to stay and Bobby Valentine doesn't. Steve Phillips brought Sedano in here. He gave Estes $6 million. He brought Burnitz in here, who Valentine did not want. He, elected to make the trade to get Vaughn in here, making $40 million for whatever it might be. Obviously, I can't say anything about the Alomar trade. It wasn't his fault.
And Bobby was in favor of Mo coming too as well.
Maybe, but you know what? He's not the general manager. The general manager pulls the trigger. If I'm going to give Bobby the blame for the players not performing, I got to give the GM the blame for bringing players who don't do well.
But what you're hearing here is that they're saying that Phillips did a better job, that it was the manager's fault, not the general manager's fault. That's what the owner's saying.
Eddie, the problem I have is they either both stay or they both go. You can't split this baby down the middle. That's the problem. But one of the reasons that Mike just said, you're going to bring a manager who's a big manager who's going to have more power than
all right, let me tell you guys something here. Fred Wilpon's going to be here, and he is here now, as a matter of fact. I'll jump on with you later if you want, but Fred is here now.
Oh, let me talk to him. Yeah,
he wants to. I'll put the headphones on him, and you can talk to him directly, and I'll hop on afterwards, okay?
Terrific. All right, now we'll talk to Mr. Wilpon. He will join us, which is great. We wanted to talk to him today, so Conan, let me know when he's sitting down. Is Fred there?
I'm down, Mike.
Okay,
Fred, thank you very much for giving us a couple of minutes. We appreciate it. I know this is a difficult day. Let's start with this.
I always give you a couple of minutes.
Well, we do appreciate it. You always do. You're very good. You're very good to us. Our first question, Fred, is you were very steadfast about both of them coming back. Was there one incident? Was there something which Eddie just alluded to, that maybe a player came to you? Did something change your mind to make you move the manager out?
No, Mike, not one incident at all. It was a culmination of a number of things, particularly in the last 2 months. I just felt that this team should have come together and didn't come together, and I was very concerned about that in terms of how we go on to 03. It was not one event. It was suggested that it might have been 1 or 2 events, and it was not at all. It was the culmination of a number of things.
Fred, how in the world can you make a decision with the two of them and keep one and let the other go? To me, I would have kept them both if it was me, but to me, it's unfathomable that you fire the one guy and let the other guy stay.
Well, my point of view was, after a lot of soul searching, that we had and have very good players. They didn't play very well, and they weren't a very good team. And therefore, I think the balance is in responsibility. Both are responsible. The balance in responsibility is that the manager has to manage those players. If I thought there weren't talent on the field, I might have felt differently. But I think that Steve was creative in putting the talent on the field. And a year ago now, or let's say January of this year, everybody would have applauded the fact of what Steve did. And I would have been among them, thinking that we would be in the postseason.
Fred, the decision to fire Bobby was yours alone, right?
Correct.
You didn't consult your general manager on firing Bobby?
No, I didn't. I didn't consult him. I didn't ask him the question directly. But certainly I've had enough meetings with him and his staff and other people, not only baseball people, to understand what their point of view was. They may not have made their point of view directly to me, but I understood what their point of view was.
Well, the point that Mike's going to get at, I don't want to steal Mike's thunder, is that you made the decision by yourself to fire the manager, yet you gave the lame duck general manager permission to go hire the next manager.
No, I didn't. I said, Chris, what I said was he and his staff will do all the interviews and the prep-up work. When they're ready to make some recommendations, I might interview a couple of people. And then we will sit down and we'll mutually agree upon who that manager should be.
Are you comfortable with your general manager having, say, 1 year left on his deal and having a lot to step up for next year, and then have a prominent manager, maybe a star manager underneath him with a big contract and multi-year? It's going to seem like he kind of completely overshadows the general manager.
Well, I think that the general manager has to produce as well, and if we get a great manager and there's overlap, so be it. We'll have a great manager. Hopefully we'll have the Steve and his staff along for more years than 03. But it's performance now. This is performance-based business.
But you didn't think while you didn't think he deserved to get fired, you don't think Phillips has done anything that deserves for him to get a new deal that would be, say, the same length as your new manager?
That's correct.
Fred, and you're telling us, good job, Mike, in that. Fred, you're also telling us that you were not influenced by maybe a couple of veteran players, maybe not you personally, but the organization was not influenced about how we got to change the atmosphere around here for next year to make this move?
Well, I think that wasn't the question that was asked before. But in answer to your question, Chris, I think that that plays in the influence, but it was not someone who came to me or anything like that. I did talk to players. I talked to them about a lot of different things of how they thought the team should be improved and things
but
of that nature.
See, Fred, that's what really drives me crazy. You are paying these guys, most of them totally overpaid for their production. You are paying these people all this money, and they all basically were awful, all of them, all season long, including Leiter, anybody you want to mention, yet you may have listened to what they had to say about the manager's office.
Well,
when they didn't look themselves in the mirror.
I didn't say the manager. I said we had discussions. I didn't ask them about the manager.
Well, obviously the manager came up. The clubhouse came up.
They
the
didn't.
Chemistry came up.
None of the players talked to me about the manager or what they thought about the manager. They did talk to me about, can we get a whatever, a
okay, no, not whatever. Get what? Well, what did they want to get?
Well, some of the players wanted to get another number one pitcher, for example. And was it feasible that we could get a number one or a strong number two?
Okay.
That's the kind of thing that people might have said.
Fred, did you seriously consider maybe going a different route and blowing them both out and going and getting a big general manager somewhere? Did that come up in your thinking? I'm sure it did, right?
Yes, it did.
And what was the reason you decided against it?
Well, my thought was that I thought that Steve did a good job. I saw his preparation for what he did in the last year or two, and I thought he was creative. I thought he put a good team on the field, or good players on the field, and those players didn't perform. I can't put the full blame on him. I think he's got a shot now to see whether he could make 03 a banner year.
We're talking with Fred Wilpon, who graciously gave us a couple of minutes. Obviously, if you're just joining us, Bobby Valentine is out as Met manager. Steve Phillips stays, has a year left on his contract, and the Mets will move towards a new manager. We'll get to those qualifications of what Fred sees in just a minute. Fred, a couple other things about what's going on here with Bobby, because this is going to be, I think, the thing that a lot of people are going to really gnaw on for the next couple of days, and that is your mindset. And without trying to act like you're on trial, the idea being, Fred, when you were saying all along they were both coming back, were you just kind of using that to delay your decision and you really hadn't made one, or did you really, in this timetable, change your mind?
On the contrary, I changed my mind. I was convinced that this could work. I was convinced of keeping both these guys. I wouldn't have said that if I wasn't convinced. You guys know me well enough.
Right.
I'm not necessarily right, but I'm straight.
But you're decisive.
And I believed that these guys could do the job that we needed to do for this organization. I determined in the last short period of time, not that I didn't start thinking about it a little before that, but I determined in the last short period of time that it couldn't be done.
Is it fair to ask you when you started to change your mind?
I would say it's in the last 6 weeks or so.
Fred,
I started to think about it. I didn't make the decision.
Until?
I absolutely did not make the decision until 2 days ago, or a day and a half ago.
2 days ago. Okay.
Fred, you'd have to admit, and go look at the teams in a postseason, and maybe with the exception of the Yankees here with George's influence, but you'd have to admit that most good teams have a chain of command where the owner picks the general manager and for the most part stays out of it. You know, the A's owner's not in the mix. The Twins owner's not in the mix. McGowan's not in the mix. The AOL people hire Sherholtz. They hire Cox, the way they go. So most good teams have a chain of command, owner, GM, manager. You, team has not been consistently good, have now broken that chain. Is that good for the organization?
Well, I don't think we've broken the chain. We have a chain as well. I don't pick the players, and they know that. I sit in meetings with them and challenge them as to why they want player A or want player B. Mm-hmm. And, of course, we have to fit it within a budget, at any particular time. But the fact is we have a chain of command. We have a chain of command like every other organization.
But in this situation, Fred, you fired the manager, and you just told us a couple minutes ago that you basically hired the new manager.
I said to you that I'm the one responsible for firing the manager. It's not the general manager who fired the manager. It's me. I fired the manager.
Then you broke the chain of command.
No, not at all. The chain of command stops where the buck stops, and the buck stops with me.
And you kind of,
just as it does in any organization where you have a CFO. You have a CEO. That's chief executive officers where the buck stops.
Did you feel some more allegiance to Phillips than you did to Valentine for some reason?
No, not at all. In fact, I have a personal relationship much more with the Valentines. And Valentine was clearly someone that I wanted numbers of years ago and promoted that.
And the other thing I think the most interesting, the two things, Fred. Doug and I differ a little bit. He would have kept both. I would have probably changed both because I thought you needed to change. I thought things went that sour. My bigger question would be why you decided to keep Steve rather than go and just clean in the house. You've said you think he's salvageable, but you're also putting him on what seems like, I'll use my words, a very short leash this next year.
I think that's true. His contract is up at the end of next year. And things haven't gone as well as he would have hoped they would have gone this year or last year. And he's got to produce.
Will he have less power and personnel than he's had in the past?
Not at all.
But you are going to pick the manager.
I'm going to be the last word picking the manager.
But if you don't
They're going to pick the managers, Chris. You can't put that. It's not fair to put words in my mouth. I said to you was he will do all of the work with his staff. They'll come to recommendations. They'll ask me to interview someone if they think that's appropriate. They'll come with recommendations, and then we will agree on that manager. I won't pick a manager, by the way, that they don't recommend.
But you might disagree with their...
That's correct.
And if you do that, then where does that leave Steve Phillips?
That
who's on a short lease?
Steve Phillips
who's on a short lease to
picking
begin
another
with?
manager.
Well, here's the thing I would say. What I would worry about if I was Steve Phillips, and I'd like to know if he would ever, and we're talking about Fred Wilpon, and we're going to have Steve Phillips on afterwards so we can ask him this directly, but I would, if I was Steve Phillips, be worried about bringing in Fred, a prominent manager, and we'll get to the manager in a second, and then have that guy really maybe have a complete road to you, and maybe just kind of push me out of the way. I got 1 year. This guy might have 3 or 4 years of big money, and he might be a very prominent guy who's got a ring or something, and I'd be worried that guy's going to just run right over me if I only have 1 year on my deal.
He won't have a direct road to me in any other way that was in existence before. In fact, one of the things Bobby wanted to do is have a direct road, and we always had a procedure. We always talked together, and Steve was always there, and Bobby was always there when I was there. By choice. I mean, not every time that I talked to Steve, obviously, or talked to Bobby, but that's the way we met.
So in essence, although you recommended, Steve's big key is Steve is going to have a successful year next year, which means he better hire a guy who gets a turnaround in 1 year. Otherwise, he's going to be in big trouble because he's only got 1 year left on his deal.
Well, Steve's job is to produce for this organization, and if we have a year like we had this year, there's no doubt that I would be extremely disappointed. I'm saying that I don't know how we're going to turn out next year. If we turned out and we had a very good year, and we didn't meet certain expectations, then that would be an assessment. It doesn't mean that Steve has done a poor job then.
But Mike made a great point. You have contracts here that are untradeable. You're not going to be able to do an awful lot with the ball club as far as changing the basic fabric of what it is right now. So it's incumbent on the person that Steve hires as a manager to basically save his job and get the players to play well.
Well, I think that they said that last year too, that we had contracts we couldn't do. I'm not sure what he'll want to do and where he will be able to accomplish it, but I'm sure he will be creative again and be able to accomplish some things to change some of the feeling of this team. The basic core of the team, I think, has good players. They have to play better. Have to play better together.
Sorry.
And
listen,
yes. The answer. I'm sorry, just finish that last thing.
Please.
It's true that the manager will play a big part because he's got to pull those players together. The general manager can't do that on the field.
One last thing before we get to the manager. Middle of the season, you made the statement in support of your general manager and manager, and you stood fast to it right to the end here, and said, "Hey, it's on the players. We'll change the players. We're not changing Valentine and Phillips." That changed. There wasn't one thing that changed it, though.
I didn't say the last part, Mike. You may have been implied the last part, that we changed the players, not the... No, I did say clearly that my intention, and absolutely was my intention, my total intention was to keep both these guys and see whether we can get through the season, salvage something from this season, which was not salvageable. And that was very, very disappointing to me at the last 6 weeks of the season.
All right, let's ask you this before we let you go. Manager, do you want a prominent... Would you take a guy who's a no-name, who's an organizational guy, or do you have to have a guy who comes here with his own name established, who's established, who everyone knows his name the minute he walks in the door?
I think at this time for our organization, we need the latter.
You need a big name.
Although the former, a no name, so to speak, might be a terrific manager next year. But right. I don't think that we can take that chance.
Well, I have to agree with you.
I do too.
I think
guy in here.
I think where you are right now with your veteran club, I think we're all agreed on that. I think you do need the guy who is already established. You don't have to question his ability or anything else. He's already established. I guess we all agree on that. So that's the kind of guy you're after.
Right.
Fred, thank you very, very much for giving us a few minutes. We really do appreciate it. Always a pleasure. Keep up the good work.
Okay, guys.
Thank you. And we're going to take a break. All right, we're going to take a break because we will have Steve Phillips get to the update. We'll get a couple of commercials. Steve Phillips will join us at 4:05, and we thank Jay Horwitz and the Mets and Fred Wilpon for coming on.
I disagree with what he did today, but give him credit.
And we'll get Steve Phillips and get his side of it right after a couple of minutes and the update.
WFAN New York. WFAN 2020 Sports.
Right after another 4 o'clock, this is John Minko. Throughout the latter part of the season, Mets owner Fred Wilpon indicated that Bobby Valentine and Steve Phillips would return for 2003 despite a most disappointing 2002. But in the end, that did not happen. Phillips stays, but Valentine is out, was fired this morning. Tonight at the Stadium, Yankees and Angels, Game 1, the American League Divisional Series. The A's and Twins, Game 1 in Oakland. Tim Hudson, Brad Radke, the starters. Game about to get going. And Randy Johnson throws for Arizona tonight. D-backs and Cardinals play their Game 1 with Matt Morris throwing for St. Louis. 77 degrees and mostly sunny skies. That's what's happening. This is John Minko with 2020 Sports on WFAN, the flagship station for New York Giants football. Here at Yankee Stadium. We'll get to the Yankees and the Angels in the playoffs a little bit later on. Twins and A's are going to begin here in a minute or two. We'll keep you updated with that score as well. Nice to have you with us. The Mets are the big topic here. We'll do that for another hour or so with your calls. And at 5, as Mike likes to say, we'll make the turn.
Yep.
And go the other way as far as the current stuff is concerned.
With the manager, and here we are in Yankee Stadium, first game of the playoffs,
George
talking about the Mets.
I mean, see the telling Fred, you know what? Yeah, Dog and Mike can be at the He watches on that dish network.
That's right. He's upstairs watching us.
Go talk Met baseball you want. Just to tweak George.
That's exactly
George can't
it.
be happy. John Sterling talking Met baseball on WFAN. He's the Yankee broadcaster. You and I in the Yankee booth talking Mets.
And one went goodbye, and the other one stayed. And the one that stayed is with us now, Steve Phillips with Mike and the Mad Dog.
Steve, thank you as usual to come on. We appreciate it as always. I'll say this right off the bat. I think that both of you should have stayed. I don't think I would have fired Bobby. I wouldn't have fired you either. I think you deserved another shot. But the problem I do have, I don't think you can split it. I don't think you can let one go and keep the other. You seem to think that the manager today deserved to be fired based on this year's performance.
Well, I think that it clearly wasn't my decision, and I think that Fred made it clear early in the year that he had a feeling about it, and I think that feeling changed as the season went on. But, clearly we didn't perform. I think that just about everybody would say that we underachieved, some to different degrees or another. And as we looked ahead, I think that change is probably going to be positive for us to see what we can do to get it turned around.
Steve, when we discussed this many times during the season, as late August when Dog was on vacation, you didn't lay it at the feet of the manager then. Do you think it gets laid at the feet of the manager now?
Well, look, I think this. I don't think that Bobby Valentine is exclusively to accept blame for this season. I don't think that is the case whatsoever. I think that you win as an organization, you lose as an organization, but then in the end, you have to make decisions to try to get it better. And I think that's what Mr. Wilpon's goal was to try to see what we could do to get a different direction, to try to get it turned around and get better performance out of the cast that we have here.
Steve, correct me if this is a wrong assumption. It looks to me like you're coming back here with your power pretty much cut up pretty bad. Do you see it that way?
Well, I don't feel it that way. I think that I interact with Mr. Wilpon on a daily basis. I talk to him just about every day, and that's the way it's been really since I've been here. And so not much has changed, even with the ownership issue having changed hands. And I think Fred took this decision under himself and made it for the organization. And right now, look, managers' decisions typically are organizational decisions anyways. I think that they're never exclusive to the baseball department. I think that ownership always is consulted on it. I think that what I think Fred is articulating is veto power when it comes to a new manager. And certainly we'll go out through a process. I talk to Fred every day, keep him informed on what I'm thinking. I talk to Jeff every day, keep him informed on what I'm thinking and what's going on. And they'll be involved in the process throughout. So I think that we'll be able to reach a consensus that we think is right for the organization, be able to put us in a positive step forward.
2 for me. 1, did you have to make any concessions to keep your job?
No, not at all. I think that Fred had said he had made the decision that I was going to be here, and that was that. I think that I'm always open to constructive criticism, ways to do things differently, or improve along the way, and so I don't. But no, absolutely not. I think that my job, the way I see it today, is the same as it was yesterday.
Now, Fred told us just a minute ago that he is looking for a proven winner. He thinks that's what this team needs, a guy who will need no introduction when he walks into the room. That kind of guy is going to cost money. He's going to want a multi-year deal. How do you feel about you on a last year of a deal having to deal with a guy who comes maybe with rings, but obviously with prestige and a bigger, longer contract than yours?
Well, I think this. I think that the general manager, whether he's in the first year of a multi-year contract or in the last year of a multi-year contract, his responsibilities are to the organization, that you're supposed to make the best decisions for the organization and not for yourself. I think it's the same thing when it comes to players. I think going into the last year of a contract, are there players that you might give a long-term contract to that are risky propositions, but for the first year might help you personally? Sure. That's not the right thing for the organization. So my view is, let's go find a manager and that we think is the best one to lead us to success. And in the end, that's the best thing for everybody. And so I think you always have to keep the organization first.
Well, that's a nice thing to say, Steve, but you're also human, and you want to keep your job, and you do agree that you have a better chance of keeping your job if you bring a big-time manager in here who's got a good track record of sort of blending a lot of personalities to have a successful year next year.
Yeah, there's no question. I think that, look, I think it should be a win-win. I think whatever is best for the organization, if I think that's the guy to lead us into the short-term and long-term, then that's also the best thing for me personally. But I think that you have to make those decisions because it's transparent otherwise, and therefore I don't think that it would be appropriate to do anything differently.
Do you feel that the candidates should be the same as Mr. Wilpon right off the bat, or will you try to integrate things about the candidate? I mean, he clearly wants a prestigious, probably winning. I mean, he didn't say he had to have a championship, but he made it clear that if the guy walks in the room, everybody's going to know who he is right off the bat. So this is obviously a big-time guy who's proven is the guy he's looking for. Are you looking for the same guy?
Well, I think credibility is important. I think particularly with a veteran team. I think obviously to me, somebody who is versatile that can handle the veteran player and handle the young player is best suited in this day and age of baseball for a large market club. I think that with the new collective bargaining agreement, I think that teams are going to have to find that blend of youth and experience, the veteran players and the young players, and therefore I think it's critical to find managers that have that versatility to be a different manager for every player. And so I think that credibility is critical when dealing with veteran players. I believe that wholeheartedly, and therefore obviously you define your list in a certain way, but I don't think that you eliminate everybody who might not be the sexiest or most high-profile name, because you may find that one guy who's compelling enough to get you to change your views.
I'm not going to ask about guys who are on teams in the playoffs or under contract, but there's a couple of guys who would seem like logical candidates if they wanted to manage again. The Tom Kellys, the Jimmy Lelands. I mean, is that the kind of guy we're talking about?
I tell you, it's far too premature. I mean, really, I got word yesterday afternoon about this and started doing some thinking about it, but we haven't really had time to meet and talk through things. I think that probably when we get off the phone here, we'll probably go into a meeting and start talking about some of the issues and really more clearly define the criteria that everybody sees, and then try to see what possibilities are out there that might match those criteria.
But you agree, in your opinion, despite the fact it wasn't your call, you agree that a change needed to be made with the Mets, right?
I thought it was the right thing to do. I think that we just, from August 4th on, things just seemed to get away from us. I think that we had the doubleheader. We lost the first game of the doubleheader against Arizona. It went extra innings. If you remember, they hit a home run, Council's home run against Benitez. It went extra innings, and we lost Alfonso to injury after that. And then it just seemed to snowball from there and got away from us. And I think that who knows what is the right answer. We'll only know a year from now or 2 years from now what the right answer is. But I think that my sense is that this is probably the best direction to try to head in and see if we can't turn it around.
A lot of people, or someone could say, and I'll say it, that firing Valentine kind of takes you off the grid a little bit, takes the players off the grid a little bit. there should be room, I think, on the griddle for all you guys.
No question about it. I think that those of us who have been on it and might still be on it don't feel that it's a free pass. I think that clearly you win and lose as a team and as an organization, and I think that we had a lot of successes here with Bobby during his time, and we've had some struggles here together as well. And I think the same thing with the players. I think certainly the players all understand if they look in the mirror that there were a lot of failures and not as many successes as we'd like. And right now we have to figure out individually what we can do for players to get them back on track, to get them back to being productive like they had been for the past 4 or 5 years, and then see what we can do to blend some new players in to try to help turn things around.
Steve, do you think your manager lost his locker room in the last 2 months of the year?
I'm sorry, lost
his locker room, his clubhouse in the last 2 months of the year?
Well, I don't know if he lost the locker room. I think that we just didn't perform. I mean, the results weren't there on the field. I think that
did they quit on him?
I don't know. I don't think they quit at all. I think that Bobby always got effort out of his players. I think I always here and there there's a guy who doesn't run a fly ball out, but I think you'll find that on every team. But I think that ninth inning wins and celebrations show the guys were in it. I think that the going to first to third, diving for balls in the outfield. I think the effort was there. I don't think you could ever question a Bobby Valentine team for lack of effort.
Sorry, one last one, Mike. Do you think did some players make it known to you or any of you guys on your staff that maybe they thought a change should be made in the clubhouse?
No, I think as Fred said, he took a lot of opinions under advisement, but he understands the sensitivity. If you open up the door for that sort of questioning or criticism from players, then the inmates run the asylum. And I think that clearly everybody understands that, and it's not something that would be appropriate. I think that I know everybody's looking for something, but I think that, I've heard Fred talk about the fact that we just didn't perform, and, there seemed at times to be a lack of sense of urgency, not effort, but just not that day-to-day grind that was there. And I think that he thought that a change was appropriate to see if we can't get that back.
Now, he said that Fred made it clear that it was his decision, but he also stated that he understood exactly where you were coming from your many meetings. So it's clear to say, I don't think you're going to quibble with this, that you were in line with his decision, right?
Yes, I would readily acknowledge that I agree with the decision. I think that, I think there's some issue being made that he didn't point blank ask the question, but it's one that in our meetings, we talk about different issues, what we can do, how we can motivate individuals, and we had a lot of meetings together, both me and Fred, and then with Bobby and the rest of my staff as well. So I think Fred kind of knew my sense without having to point blank put me on the spot to really make the decision, because he was going to take, I think, this burden on his own shoulders.
Steve, we're talking about Steve Phillips, Mike and the Mad Dog. Bobby Valentine's out. Steve stays. We're here before Game 1 of the Yankees and the Angels. We'll get to that in a couple of minutes with Joe Torre. Steve, if a prominent manager, you're interviewing him to come to the Mets, and he's got 3 or 4 other teams who are after him, and you want to try and bring him to the Mets, and he says, well, Steve, let me ask you this. You're bringing me in here. Your owner's going to stamp it, but you got 1-year contract. How do I know I'm going to be working with you in this chain of command after 1 year? What do you tell him?
Well, I'm not sure that's necessarily a question that he's going to ask me. I think that my view is that if we're successful, we'd be together and stick around for a longer period of time. I mean, I have an option for a year beyond next season that I hope that we're successful next year, that we'll be able to exercise that and be around for another year. But it's one that I'm not worried about. I understand the perception of it, but I think that the communication will be what it should be, and in the end, if we find the right person and the right guy for the organization, then it's the right guy.
So you don't feel like a lame duck?
No, I don't. You know what? I don't know what that is. I just keep working until somebody says not to, and try to do the right thing and do what we can to put it together. And I don't suspect that a manager's going to come in and think that he's going to walk all over me in my last year of a deal.
Steve, thank you for coming on. Appreciate you being honest. We'll talk to you along the way here.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you, Steve Phillips.
17 here on the Fan. Mike,
we appreciate them both coming on.
They did a nice job. They didn't have to come on. They were always very accommodating.
I would not have made this move.
I can understand why they did it. They can't change the players. It's the same group from last year. For next year, who's going to be here last year. So as a result, you're going to have to motivate the same group of guys. Bobby didn't do it this year. What makes you think he do it next year? So I can understand where Wilpon's coming from. I do have a problem, though, of almost putting more of the blame on the manager compared to the general manager. That bothers me a lot. And I like Steve, so I'm not trying to tell you I would have fired Steve. I wouldn't have. But if I'm firing Bobby, I got to fire Steve, too. I got to be fair about it. And there's other GMs out there. That guy from Toronto's available. He's done a good job. Sabian, he's available, and there's not a better general manager in baseball than him, except maybe Billy Beane. So there are some other guys that you could have gotten to be the GM if you really wanted to, really blow up the place. You could have gotten a guy in here who's going to do a pretty good job for you.
Dog, we differ on bringing him back. I thought it reached the deplorable stage, and I'm not putting all the blame on Bobby. I think you got to I'm always a believer in putting a tremendous amount of the onus on the players. I think the players are more responsible than anybody. But my point all along was that unless you were going to change a lot of faces in there, you needed to get a new voice in there. Bobby wasn't going to come back, I thought, and be successful leading the same group of guys. Now, if you could tell me you were going to change 15 of the guys, you could have brought Bobby back. If you're not going to know that you can do that, I thought you had to change the manager. Now, deciding to change the manager, which I would have done, would I have changed the general manager? Yes. I don't like this idea of this. Well, we don't think enough of him to give him a new contract and let him go hire a new manager. We're going to make him work on the last year of his contract. If I felt that way, then I'd blow them both out and go hire Brian Sabian and tell Brian Sabian, rebuild my team, work with a $100 million payroll instead of what you got in San Francisco, and go hire me a manager and put my stake into the fans. Here's my master builder. It's Sabian. Right now, what you're saying is Phillips has been so-so. He's had his good years, his bad years. I'm giving him another chance, but my master plan here is that I'm bringing in a manager who's going to motivate my veteran team. So it's not a master builder, it's my manager. So the star of this whole mix
becomes the manager.
Is going to be the new manager.
The chain of command is broken. That's the bottom line.
The new manager is going to be the guy because Phillips is already here. Unless he makes 9,000 trades, which we don't expect him to. He'll make a couple, and listen, they're going to try and bring in a big pitcher, sure, if they can. I mean, there's not that many available, but if they could do that, sure. Any team wants to go get another great pitcher, they'd be dumb not to. But the bottom line is, it's going to come down to, Jimmy Leland, Tom Kelly, Lou Piniella. I'll just use a name just for the sake of it. Dusty Baker. I can give you 4 or 5 more. But what the bottom line is? Some prominent guy who's going to say, I can motivate, I can put that veteran team together. That's a weird way. That's a weird mix, a weird way of doing it. Especially when you only give your general manager 1 year. That Phillips stays at Valentine's go. I don't have any problem with Valentine going because it's a mess. But I think he probably should have cleaned the whole thing out today.
I think Lou Piniella is going to manage the Mets next year. I don't think Dusty is going to be good in New York, so I'm going to put Dusty.
I would agree with that.
I think Dusty can't handle the criticism. This is a tough town for that. We all know. Dusty doesn't even talk to KNBR after 2000, so how's he going to talk to all the media he's got to deal with here? I think Lou Piniella from New York, he's got a big name, Tweak George to go along with it. Sounds like Gillick might leave. He's upset about the payroll in Seattle. If I had to give you a prediction right now, Lou Piniella is going to manage the Mets next year.
I think Piniella's a possibility. I agree with you about Dusty being sensitive. I don't know if Dusty wants to live in New York either. You know Dusty better than I do.
I don't know him that well, but I know he's sensitive.
I would also keep Tom Kelly in the mix here. I think he's a possibility. He's won before. He's good with a veteran club. He's a very good manager. I would put him in the. I would think I don't think Leland anymore.
No, I agree.
I think Tom Kelly's a possibility.
So Piniella and Kelly is where we stand.
I would think probably right now they'd be probably the lot. I mean, we could probably find another guy. I don't think it'll be Buck Showalter because he's not known to work with veteran teams anyway. So I don't think it'll be Buck. Buck's got the Milwaukee job. I think he's shopping around for a better job. I think Valentine can get a job if he wants. He might sit out a year first, just take it easy. But I think you're looking at a guy who probably has a ring and clearly has a big name who will be the manager of the Mets next year.
4:22, Mike. Let's take a break with Minko. We'll come back with your calls for a little while on the Mets. Let's hear from you. First, John, Sports Radio 66.
WFAN 2020 Sports.
Painful, I must say, because I have the deepest respect for Bobby personally, as I said in the release. And so it was a very painful decision.
But a decision Met owner Fred Wilpon says had to be made, and he made it, and it was relayed to Bobby Valentine at 10 o'clock this morning. Valentine fired as manager of the Mets today. He took over for Dallas Green as manager of the Mets during the 96 season. His tenure included a National League championship, a World Series appearance against the Yankees, but in a season with high expectations, 2002 was the most disappointing year for the Mets, and as a result, the manager is gone. The Yankees have several new faces. They're ready for this postseason run. Gone are the likes Mike, Santino Martinez, O'Neill, Brocious. Yanks and Angels play game 1 of their divisional playoff series tonight at the stadium, and you can hear the game on WCBS 880 in the first pitch right around 8:15. The Twins and A's are underway in Oakland, and that game is scoreless in the home half of the first inning. And on the schedule tonight, D-backs and Cardinals game 1 of their best of 5, and that'll take place in Arizona. This report brought to you by Stars Super PAC. Tune in to the Stars Free Movie Weekend, October 4th, 5th, and 6th to see movies like The Princess Diaries, The Fast and Furious, and The Mummy Returns. Call 1-800-SUPER-PAC or go to StarsSuperPAC.com. With reports every 20 minutes, this is John Minko.